hear you now.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
You good?
I am.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So then this will work. All right. Okay. You all set?
I am.
Did you just open up a third location?
No, I'm not that crazy. I actually, believe it or not, I had two locations, and I actually closed one because it was just getting too much. I had both locations for 5 years.
So where did I get that from? I am sure I saw a posting like that.
You did. So probably what happened was that we had two locations, one in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and one in Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Right.
And the Portsmouth, New Hampshire location, the building had sold. So what we did is that we just moved everything to Newburyport for a year, and we were already in Newburyport for 5, and we were already in Portsmouth for 5. So we had both buildings for 5 years.
Right.
You understand? And then
Yeah.
the Portsmouth building sold, and then we took a year off, and I just said, okay, I'm only going to do one school, and that's it. The two schools at 3,500 square feet apiece. It's for my style and for what I'm teaching and for my how I conduct things. It doesn't set up well. It's just you really run yourself ragged.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because that's what I wanted to. That actually one of the first things I wanted to touch base with you on, because you have your feet in so many disciplines, and then you offer multiple classes at your place. So
That's right.
So what role does the Kali play?
Inside the facility, teaching wise, or petition?
But yeah, I mean, because since this is the FMA files, we're going to talk primarily about the role of Filipino martial arts and what you do.
Right.
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 So can you touch on that for a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I mean, like I told you, I think once before, I've had the luckiest opportunity to kind of train under a lot of the founders of each of these systems.
Right.
So that was a very fortunate part of training, which I didn't realize then, but it is now that I, obviously look back and I do this for a living. So as far as the Filipino martial arts goes, inside the school, I like every system. I teach the system as it is. I don't mix. Let's say Kali with Silat with JKD, or say Kyle Gotch's submission wrestling system. So as far as the Kali goes, I actually will teach it straight up out of the books, A to Z.
Right.
And I teach that 3 times a week.
Okay. So you keep everything separate then.
I do. So I have the Inosanto system.
Uh-huh.
I have the Villabrille-Largusa system, and I have the Lucaylucay system.
Okay, but now it's not. But so it's one class of each of those 3 every week?
Not particularly. So sometimes, like, some students want to concentrate, let's say, on the Inosanto system, and we'll do, like the box patterns or the blade stuff, or we'll do the single volley drills and the high-low highs and and stuff of that nature.
Okay.
The Pentastas power foot drills with the blades, or the Tempera stuff. So, and then or even in the same night, sometimes we could do a split. We could do like a half-hour Inosanto, a half-hour of Villabrille-Largusa, or a half-hour Lucaylucay. Regardless of what we do, we keep it I keep it very separated. I say, okay, we're ending here with this system,
right?
And we go into that. And I find that I have found that to be really important, especially these days, actually.
Why is that?
Well, how do I put this in a mild manner? Today we see a layer cake. So today you might see like Inosanto technique on top of Illustrissimo technique on top of, let's say, Remy Press's technique.
Mhm.
and then you'll see that blended, and that's not it's a bad thing at all. It's not a bad thing whatsoever. But to learn it, it is.
Right.
That's where the problem becomes. So if I'm there to teach you a system to learn, if I'm layering that like on that type of example, what
Yeah.
ends up happening is that not only does the technique become really sloppy because you don't have enough time to perfect it,
Yeah.
the technique becomes almost useless because you can't figure out where to put it and what time to put it in.
Okay. So I made a comment recently. You tell me if this is what you're referring to. That when you're on the receiving end of a blended thing, that is the result of somebody who learned it all separately, then blended it, and is now teaching it to you in a blended fashion. And you kind of owe it to yourself to maybe separate them on your own rather than accepting the blended thing as the final product. Is that anywhere related to what you're talking about?
You mean they accept it or you accept it as the instructor?
Well, see, okay, so even before I got permission to teach,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I was getting a blend of stuff. So I was very interested in knowing what came from where. I did that as a student. I don't know if I I mean, so I don't know if everybody does that or not.
I, I, well, truth being said, I think if you're from the Inosanto school, for sure you was learning you was learning a blend because I had before I went to I had so my teachers were Guru Dan and Ted, and then I would see Guru Ted, and I would see of course Guru Ted's father, and I would see everybody else once a month like Ego Salute and all those guys come in,
Right.
but so for example back in that time you would learn Guru Dan, he'd be like, oh, we'll do Villabrille stuff. And then you may cover like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of that. So I had like maybe 10% of the Villabrille stuff before I went to Lopez and Lagusa. You know what I mean? I didn't but I knew it existed, but again, you would see it and then you wouldn't see it for another maybe 4 or 5 months or 4 months or 3 months or whatever, Guru Dan's, mode was at that time. So I think we do come from that, style or system.
Yeah.
So I think that's an accurate, statement that you do come from a blended system for
Yeah.
sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just find the Inosanto system, and I do have it manualized and stuff. Like the box patterns and the and the Singawali drills, and we have the certain disarms and the blade stuff, the barra, the 10 barra, the 10 advanced barra, the panasastro. So there is a certain pattern to it, but I don't mix that with say Guru Ted stuff or Ben Lagusa's or
Okay.
Villabrille stuff.
So you mentioned three things, right? You said you mentioned Largusa, you mentioned Lucaylucay, you mentioned Inosanto system. So for somebody who is not aware, can you distinguish and differentiate a little between those three? Like what would constitute Lucaylucay system?
So Guru Ted stuff was okay. So Guru Ted stuff was almost like a Lacoste and Ben Lagusa mix. He looked like John Lacoste. I mean, he maybe even looked like a little bit of Angel Cambalas, who actually Felice Dizon was Cambalas' teacher. Felice Dizon, we know, was Villabrille's cornerman in the fights.
Yes.
So we know they had the very similar style. So Guru Ted stuff looked a little. If you look at Guru Ted move and you look at Guru Dan move, they don't look the same.
True.
They look almost different. Guru Ted has a little bit more twisty style, more optic to his footwork, dropping the body weight, twisting the body more. He has a little bit more like Lacoste look to him. And he adds in the Panatukan, the punch and stuff of that nature. So let's say distinctively that you was learning Lakai style. There is a certain method to it. There is a certain style to it. sort of, you know what I mean, that is taught. And then if you're looking at Guru Dan stuff, you'll see that it's a little bit farther out in distance. It's not as close as Guru Ted used to. So if you look at Guru Ted stuff, Guru Ted does the major minor, which is the rolling type of action with the stick. He does the check-in, but he's a little bit closer to the body a lot when he does that.
Yeah.
Guru Dan, if you see his stuff, he's a little bit farther out when you see him check the hands and you see him do like inside deflections, outside deflections, box patterns, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You see his stuff is a little bit on a longer range.
Okay.
And then if you look at the Kali, and ironically, the Villabrille-Largusa taught all those guys, you know, from Bastillo to Guru Dan to all of them. But if you look at that style, obviously, that style, it's very fluent in the way it moves. Yeah. Long range, short range, and they are always on the move a lot. So they're always, you know, they check with the shoulder, they can check with the kick, they can check with the hand. It's that style in particular is a very ancient. A lot of people refer to it as a classic Kali, but mm-hmm. it's very distinct in its style and look, for sure. Yeah. You know, you can definitely tell it in its movement that it belongs to that style system.
Especially if you hang the camera in a bird eye view.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is up with that?
Well, you know, this is a funny. So when you see the Villabrille, when you see that system move, and there's early footage of Guru Dan doing that system with Guru Ted, and I've posted that before. You can't almost see how truly effective it is because it moves really, really fast. That system was displayed actually, like I said, in the 1964 and 65 Long Beach tournament with Bruce Lee. But it moves so fast, it moves so fluently, you almost can't see the strikes. So, because when they move the stick, they don't ever stop. The stick is constantly in this circle pattern motion, and it attacks the hand, the head, and the legs, mm-hmm. which is known as defanging the snake. That's really where the term originally came from.
Right.
Ben Lagos was saying defang the snake. So they're always constantly targeting those areas and those targets at all time. The hard part is that system particularly moves in what we call Tayeta Mohara footwork, which is circle patterns. Mm-hmm. They don't move in what we call, you know, crab patterns, which is side to side. Or sometimes people refer to it as just triangle. That particular system, like we said, moves in Tayeta Mohara, which is circling. So it's very hard to see the strikes as they're getting as they're getting executed. And it's also very hard to see the blocks, because in that particular system, the strikes become the blocks and the blocks become the strikes because they don't ever check the stick. So in other words, most systems, say you do a roof, a peony block, they don't really, the stick doesn't ever touch the stick in that system. The stick always touches the hand, even if you're blocking. Ah. So the strike and the block are one. So it's very hard to insight and see that when you're even trying to example of it. So I thought, and remember, it always works in the 4 cross patterns and the circle patterns. That's why Kempo Karate has the circle with the different angles in it. Ben Lagousa actually put that in there.
Yes.
For Ed Parker.
Right.
And that's a symbol of the Kali.
Right.
So if you see that, it's very hard to see that when you're at eye level in front of somebody. But if you're at bird's eye level, you can really see where that stick hits the head, hits the ankle, hits the hand in rotation and keeps twirling. So that was the reason behind that.
Okay. Did you run a second camera while you were doing that though?
I did. They ran like 4 or 5, believe it or not, you know, and well, it was, from what I understand from the cameraman, it's very difficult to follow somebody when they're moving in Tayeta Mohara footwork with twirling that stick.
Yeah.
It's not like you're at a standstill, one-dimensional. And it's funny because I remember when I first learned that system, you know, Lagousa told me, he always said, there's a circle around your opponent as you see around his if you look at his feet and around him on the floor, and then there's, if you look directly at him at a vertical, there's a circle as well. And if you're above his head, there's a circle. And I was like, how am I going to understand these circle patterns? You know what I mean? So if you see it from a bird's eye, you can kind of see that now. You know, it kind of gives you a better idea.
Yeah. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
It really,
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
When you think about it on a collie style or a fighting system, it really is a fascinating, you know, the way it moves and the way it thinks, you know, it really is. Especially with, and remind you, especially with a heavy stick. They don't ever, because they don't train with a rattan, they always train with a bahi, the heavy wood.
Yeah. So was that camera work, was that part of like a special project or something you're putting together?
So, so what happened in the last few years, what I decided to do, I decided to just, well, what happened many years ago is I logged everything with notes. I noted everything.
Yeah.
And then students were starting to see my notes and my manuals. And people that have been around for a long time around the systems, around, you know, Guro, a lot of guys. And they said, your notes are crazy. Like, your notes are very detailed and they're very, like, there's so many of them and they're laid out. So what ended up happening was those notes became almost, you know, kind of valuable in a lot of ways. So I said, I'm just going to start documenting everything I kind of know.
Right. Yes.
Traditionally. Because what was happening is a lot of the stuff was sort of like getting lost.
Yes.
In this layer cake type of, these layers somewhere.
Yeah.
So I just decided to start documenting everything, because as I get older, I was like, it's funny, as you know, if you do this stuff long enough, you forget more than what you know. So, and when you're demonstrating, right, if somebody throws a certain energy at you, you do a certain thing out of reaction rather than thought.
Right.
Unless you're teaching specifically a certain thing and saying, we're going to do this, this, and this, you know. But for the most part, you know, you might get lost. So I said, instead of getting lost or any of this material getting lost, I'm going to document, you know, document it.
I love it.
So I did, you know, and I documented, like Kyle Gotch, I have something like 100 and, I got it's well over 130, 40 hours of him being interviewed and stuff. So, and I haven't released any of that either, you know, but it really was just, I was just trying to keep a lot of the material sort of like alive.
Yeah. I love those videos. If you ever release the cameras that are down on the floor, let me know.
I certainly will. That, you know, it's funny because that particular system, it's very, you know, it's not well, it's well known through the older guy, you know, through the you know, Guro and Bastillo. Like, I mean, those guys really know the system, but it's just really not a system it's only popular through gurus. They're just really traditionalists, really, you know what I mean? They believe in, you know, just training traditionally all the time with a guru, directly with a guru, and, you know, and stuff of that nature. So I just decided to just preserve everything, because things get lost with time, for sure, you know.
Do they, the Villabrille-Largusa system, do they have like really strict rules for how you are supposed to show stuff even? Like, if you're demonstrating something, you're supposed to do it this particular way and not deviate from that?
So this is where the gray area comes. So I'm gonna be, you know, this is sort of like where, and I, you know, I hope I'm not gonna offend any people on any side of the ship, but in that particular system, they have very strict rules.
Yeah.
It's, you know, they have very, very strict rules on bylaws. They have actually, if you saw their bylaws, it looks like something out of Congress. They have a sergeant at arms. They have a secretary of state. They have internal investigations. They have They've never changed really anything. They have changed a little bit of some things of technique. Like I think when Guru Dan learned it, like say the chicken step, for example, he did, you know, strike 1 forward, strike 2 forward, strike 3, and then they would go back. Where now they go strike 1 forward and turn to the right clock. They do a pattern of clock and counterclockwise. So it's changed on that scale a tiny bit, but that didn't make any difference on your movement. You know what I mean? That's how I think Guru Dan, Guru Ted, Lucky, all those guys move so well, because they learn the classic. It's like learning classical music, classical dance. And if you learn how to classical dance, then it seems like you can blend well with a lot of, you know, stuff. So that being said, traditionally they bow in and they call on the old spirits. When they train, they call on the dead to bring, you know, the past in, so it protects you, and that they ask for blessings, and then they ask for, you know, blessings from past masters. Very, very traditional. They train with the hard stick. They all line up in a certain formation. They wear certain colors to indicate who's who. In a lot of ways, there's a black and white side of this story. So the black side, or the bad side, is as time goes on and technology goes on and film happen and social media happen and exposure happen, this system can become like, oh, this is the system a lot of people talk about or, you know, seek, and it has rarity be found. You know, Villabrille was really one of the only documented ring fighters, right, to put this stuff to the death, you know, by 4-star general. And there's the diploma that we have now, that we didn't have for years, but the diploma we have found. And, you know, so that's the black side, that, you know, but the white side is that keeping the traditional format, it really, really puts you into a different atmosphere that won't change. So for an example, when you become a certified guru, you have to go through the blood ceremony, right? So when I became a certified guru, you know, you have to you have to drink wine from this chalice. They say a Latin prayer. You're linked, what they call dikatana. You're linked by chain now. You're linked by brotherhood. And so I'm linked, let's say, to my fellow gurus, and I'm linked to Lopez. I'm linked to Lagusa. I'm linked to Inosanto. I'm linked to Villabrille. See, they consider you linked spiritually because you drank from the chalice. The same chalice that Ben Lagusa drank from in the 60s, which we have on film, and Villabrille passed it on. So there is a tradition to it that's really kind of cool, you know, really nice. That's kind of missing today, because think about, like, you know, think about why Thai boxing is so strong, right? They train physically, but they train spiritually.
Yes.
It's the same thing in Kali. Kali trains physically and they train spiritually at the same time. So it makes it a really super strong system, in my opinion, you know.
Do you find that a particular type of individual is attracted to Kali because of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I find that I find when people kind of round robin, when they go around the merry-go-round a few times, they look for a little bit what's more. Where's the more intense material? How can I deepen my thought process or horizon, or my movement process on this? You know what I mean? How can I make this move even more intense? You know?
I find it to be the seekers and the things who become attracted to it.
Yes. Yeah. You almost, true. And that, you know, it's funny that you say that, because I was just telling, I think, some students that if you do seek the material, you'll find it. You know what I mean? You just have to sort of like uncover it today, looking under a few more rocks than you could years ago. You could go to a certain place and be like, okay, I'm certainly going to find this here. Right. Now you got to kind of unlayer a couple of onion layer peels to kind of find the goods, you know, the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, it's not a side into one side or to the other, but there's just the issue today is that we have so many people teaching today.
Right.
So what you have is a lot more teachers than there is a lot more exposable material.
Mm-hmm.
The demand for teaching, or the demand for a school in the middle of Alaska, is more, is a demand than their actual material there. So if they have a little bit of material, even, then they can have a school.
Yeah.
Because, it's never going to play catch up. Those people don't know that much about, let's say, Kali,
Yeah.
for an example. So, you can teach for at least a year without knowing any material or depth material, so to speak. But if somebody's been around for a while, they're like, oh, I already kind of know that box pattern. I already kind of know how to move like that. Can you teach me how to move like the old style, like they? So, and that's, I'm glad. I mean, if it wasn't for me, if it was John Smith or John Doe, I hope somebody.
I caution my people all the time to not become those that you see in social media doing what I call doing the stick. Right.
Yeah.
Because you can learn a pattern and then you can reproduce that pattern and you can put it on video and you can pipe that video out to millions of people around the world.
Which a lot of people are doing. A lot of people are taking even like Guru Dan's nice stuff and they're calling it, this system, that system, this and that. You can tell it's definitely his stuff. You know what I mean? It just hasn't been credited to him. But a lot of people are doing that, because a lot of people, and I hope I'm not going to offend a lot of people here. I'm not trying to, but I'm old school. So when I was taught by, the old school guys, so it might be a little rough on my description, but it's not always about gaining the dollar bill or gaining how many students. Look, I ran 2 schools. So I mean, it's not always about gaining how many students you can get. Sometimes it's about gaining the passion of what you're trying to do and what
Right.
you're the love of what you're doing. So, that being said, sometimes you want to look under the layer of blanket. It's like, I mean, if you're teaching the trapping hands and you're teaching, the 12-stage lap style cycle or the trapping, I mean, nobody really wants to get in depth with the chi style because your shoulders start hurting, and the elbows start, you know what I mean? So I said, so all those times I spent at the academy and all those nights, and then I'd have to go to the Thai restaurant with Guru Dan after on Tuesdays and Thursdays and stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning, and my arms are bruised up, and then I have to wake up the next day and go to work, was not a forfeit, So I don't know, there's got to be some, somewhere along the line, I'm glad that some things do stay traditional, because I think as time goes on, that tradition may be a calling or a demand in some which ways. I can tell you that in the Philippines, at least in the Kali, and there's definitely a difference between the Kali, the Arnis, and the Screamer, and there's a difference in the style. But yeah,
do you refer to it as Kali? Or
I do, and my wife can verify that because my wife's from Cebu, so there's definitely. She goes, she said, funny enough, she goes, no, and I go to the Philippines and teach Calgotch submission wrestling, believe it or not. So they don't want to learn Kali, but they know, and that's what Cindy. So Cindy goes, nobody wants to learn Kali. She goes, and nobody really. So and she's from Cebu, and it's funny enough is she says nobody will even keep it growing or going there because nobody really wants to learn it. But and even in Cebu, they don't even know the word Kali. It's they call it Arnis. They or once in a while you'll hear the word Screama, but even that is sort of like faded now because remember that even in the Philippines, even particularly when you get down to Cebu in that area, Koreans send their children to Cebu to learn English.
Really?
Yes. So a lot of Koreans from Korea send their kids to Cebu to learn English because the English language in the Philippines is so prominent because a lot of them are considered highly professional, like medical nurses, doctors, and stuff of that nature. So English is a very, very, is their second language, like it's nothing.
Do they send Taekwondo teachers with them?
Do they send what?
Taekwondo teachers.
with no, no, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't send. Yeah, they don't send. Although they certainly send their soap opera and drama shows with them because they're super popular with Filipinos. You know, so that's for sure. But it's funny enough because if you go there and stuff, you'll find that like she said, like they'll tell you like it's barely alive, like it's unheard of, especially like Kali and stuff of that's almost like, and I bring in old scriptures there and stuff of that nature, and it's almost like it's even the old timers that will tell you like it's almost, you'd have to find somebody that's like 95 years old to really translate even the scriptures there in the word, because nobody really keeps up with it.
That's interesting. On a related note, you posted yesterday a video of Nurzu Haira, the gold medalist from the SEA Games, doing her jurus in Silat, right?
That's right.
And I'm looking at it, and it has the same atmosphere of Rika Usami doing her Japanese Shotokan kata. What's going on in the Silat world with that?
Well, even when I was studying with, I never called him Pendaka Herman because, and again, I hope not to raise any feathers, but at the time, Guru Herman didn't want to be called Pendaka because he was pure Dutch. I mean, he was pure. God for me, saying he was pure Indonesian.
Right.
So he and his father and him had, they really identified themselves as pure Indonesian style, and so I didn't want to offend it. So I always called him Guru all the time. That was sort of like that's a name for the Indonesian teacher. So at that time, I studied directly with him for several years in his backyard, and I was very close to him. They had those tournaments back then. They weren't big. They did have them, but the forms weren't like they are today. The forms were more traditional.
Right.
So if and I have a lot of them on film of him, and when we went over and filmed it, they were a lot more traditional, and they were a little bit more, let's say, fluent and hidden. And since like the martial arts became popular, and like tournaments and like extreme martial arts events and forms came popular, then SEA Games became popular. And what happened was that the form of Silat, when they would perform in front of judges, became almost more formal. Right. So when they would display their strikes, they became paused in the air. The kicks became paused. The strikes became paused. The footwork became like, they do the same footwork like 3 or 4 times in a row to show like consistency. So they changed it a little bit to show more dynamic and more like presentation, more, and you just see it like she would smile more. So it's more for judgmental than it is for actually a spiritual sense,
Okay.
And that's really, and I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways, because what happens is at least it attracts younger people to train in martial arts, which as teachers we need. If you don't have the younger generation interested in this stuff, which, you see a lot, it can't live, right? Yeah. So it's good to see that. But it does change, the form does change from being a little bit more dynamic, so to speak.
How old is the youngest student that you have?
Oh, 5, 6.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And interest
them?
I do. But what's funny is I always said, after this experience of owning these schools and all this, 5 and 6, 7-year-olds are great to teach. They'll do anything.
Right.
They'll do anything, and their training is they have no fear, and they have no limitation at all. Teenagers are the worst. Are the absolute worst. The worst. Out of out of a
can't
hundred
admit that I agree.
out of a hundred teenagers, if there's 20 of them or 10 of them that come out of that, then that might be.
Yeah.
And then the other good party is I call it the after years. After you've gone out and partied and gotten drunk and thrown up and you got the wildlife out of your system, and then you settle down a little bit, like, hey, I think I want to take martial arts.
Yeah.
That's a great age.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the beginning and the end.
What about What about the millennials?
You want my opinion on that? And you know what I mean? You want my opinion? It's just it's really difficult. It's really difficult. I mean, you don't know where. It's really hard. It's really hard because, you know, you're in martial arts for one. You know, so you know, there is going to be a certain part of contact. There's going to be a certain part of bruising. There's going to be a certain part of sort of like not achieving, right? I mean, you gotta almost be in a position where you're gonna lose, not competition wise, but individually. Yeah. You're not gonna get it the first time. You're not gonna get it the second time. Right. So what happens is that you're gonna be in a sport, or you're gonna be in an active let's say martial art form, or active, whatever you want to call it these days, activity that you're not going to become good at immediately. Right. You know, you may have talent for basketball, you may have talent for football, and that can come from school programs or watching. But martial arts is different. You can't just become good. You have to be forged good. It just doesn't become, you know what I mean? Unless you're like a Bruce Lee, 1 out of 10 million or whatever, you know what I mean, of that nature. You know, even MMA fighters will tell you that it just doesn't come. You know, even in you know, even that, as primitive as MMA may be sometimes, I mean, it has to come with forgery, you know what I mean? So
cast your mind back, and can you think of anything when you first started learning Kali that was difficult for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it depends on what teacher I was with at the time. So I you know, I can tell you that you know, the good thing is, well, put it this way. When I was at the Inosanto Academy back then, you know, it was in that warehouse, Swan Warehouse. I mean, I had some great seniors like Jeff Chung, Ed Frankel, Mark. I mean, all those, you know, Salon, all those guys were older, you know, I mean, they were always around. So if you didn't get anything, or you couldn't get it, it was like, damn, I can't get this. You could ask them, and they've been around since like 1974, right? Yeah. Jeff Chung and all. And they were like, well, let me show you how it works. And it was sort of like almost like a easy key to get in the door a little bit. Because, you know, if Guru Dan was showing it, he might show like 10 different things. Like, damn, what was the first thing? I can't remember the first. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit easier because they would show. So that being said, there was certainly difficult stuff, and especially with Inosanto, his hands and his knife stuff moves so fast. That's a difficult thing. The stick stuff is, you know, you can kind of get it, you know, a little bit more. But back then, his hands and blade stuff, it's just so fast, you know what I mean? And it's just so sensitive that's the key thing to get, you know what I mean? And that at that time, it was hard. You know, the bruising of the forearm, just getting pocks out and slapped like of that trapping all the time, you know, was not easy either. And Guru Ted's eyes, in my opinion, Guru Ted moves a certain way that's really difficult to imitate. He, even in his trapping hands, even in his boxing, even with his stick, he moves a very distinctive way, very smooth, and Guru Ted, you know, to be quite honest, with, you know, I mean, he would write his technique on the back of a Taco Bell box or something, you know what I mean? But when he displayed it and when he taught, he was like no other. He moves like a snake. I mean, he moves so smooth. You know what I mean? And he translates that through, and he's a very good teacher if you listen to him. He's an extremely well teacher, but he moves so well, it's hard to duplicate it. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you know, at the time too, I was 6 foot, you know, 195 pounds, and he's, you know, 5 whatever and 100, and you know, so it's hard to duplicate that style because he can get low and he can optic, you know, a lot. Lopez and Lagusa. Lopez is a perfectionist. Holy Jesus, you know, is he?
Really?
But yeah, his form is flawless. When he moves at long range, Kabisi-Dara, what they call Kabisi-Dara range, File range, his feet move, particularly him and Lagusa both. I mean, but Lopez's feet move like almost like people's like in Aikido where they move. You can't really see their feet. You know what I mean? So in that sense, it's just really flawless. His technique is flawless, really.
Right.
You know, he has flawless technique, and he doesn't break that. He learned it right from Villabrille and Largusa. So his technique is flawless, and that was hard to pick up because I remember I was probably one of the only whites in the class, and they call you, and they used to call me like Howley. You know, they call you Howley. Like they'll let you know like you're white, you don't move well. You know, it doesn't matter how many diplomas you got. It doesn't matter how long you got. You're like, you don't move well. I was like, okay, now that I accepted that, you know what you mean? So I accepted humiliation, and then now and then Lagusa moves a little bit. He's more close quarter, but the hard part about duplicating his movement is the fact that his feet move so rhythmic and hit the ground with opticking and dropping the body weight so quickly and fast. You can't almost, when I say optic, I mean, he's always, you know, he's always sort of like, he's never in the same position with his feet or hands or body when he's blocking or striking with a stick.
Right.
So he's always, you know, moving it on that scale, you know, which is really difficult to duplicate. Very, I mean, it's just, I always said he looks like Fred Astaire doing Collie.
Have you ever shared Guro Ted's? You know, you remember he did that 3 video series in like '82,
Right?
With Blaze and Tree and Jeff Amada. Have your people ever seen that stuff?
They have, you know, they have. You can see some of that stuff, I think, on social media or YouTube or something like that. You know, oh, you can't.
No.
I actually have the original, the tapes.
I have the VHS.
Yeah, the VHS. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Stuff never got released on.
Oh yeah.
Anything, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, and of course my students are just too young to know who Guro Ted is. You know what I mean? For the most part, you know. So funny enough, you know, as it is. So.
Hey, is there anything similar going on in the Philippines, like related to what's going on with the SCA games in Indonesia or Singapore?
No, but the biggest, no, even when I was there, when I go there to teach seminars, I mean, they know who Villabrille is. He's an icon over there. But to sort of like see the Collie and stuff like that, it doesn't exist really. You know what I mean? It doesn't, and you know, so you can't imagine how 50,000 people in the Manila Stadium with Villabrille fighting somebody in the ring was. You know what I mean? I mean, it must have been a spectator event because it's not like that at all. The biggest sort of sports over there right now is boxing and MMA because of one FC and because of Manny Pacquiao.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
So you know, and believe it or not, boxing has been in the Filipino culture for a long time. I've been in the Cebu Hills, you know, on visiting family's farm, and like all of a sudden I'd be passing a house with boxing bags in the middle of, looked like an old Thai gym when I was in Thailand. You know, you run on the back row, so it was like somebody Thai boxing here. It's the boxing. Boxing's a big sport there.
I had a question asked of me, and it was, would boxing footwork help my eskrima? And I said, I think you got the question backwards. Right.
And you do. Agree, because the screamer, or certainly the Collie or it was there much before the boxing was.
Right.
The footwork was, you know, was there by far before the boxing.
No, I told the guy I told the guy to do some research on Flash Elordi.
That's right.
And his influence on Muhammad Ali. Am I on the right track?
You are. Yeah. You are. You are. Just
All right.
like and the same is it's yeah. Funny enough, I tell people this too. Like I run people that are high black belts in Kempo karate, and people don't realize that the check hand in Kempo karate, the major minor hits, that's Lagusa's influence in the backyard with Ed Parker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, see that patch you're wearing with the circle with the angles?
Yeah.
That's Lagusa's, you know?
You should probably do a video on that again or something, because I don't think people are aware of that at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the checking hands and stuff like that's a big Lagusa, you know, influence. That's a big Lagusa influence, you know. So I know people don't realize that. People definitely don't realize that, you know. That footwork and that system is so complex. It really is. But once you learn it, you won't move. You move like the wind after you learn it, for sure.
Yeah.
But it just takes so much to learn it.
Tell me if I dreamt this, but I read where Ben Largusa said that Kali is Silat and Silat is Kali. Did I dream that?
Not entirely. No, you didn't dream that. Actually, that's actually, believe it or not, Lagusa is born in a place called Lucaylucay, same place as Lacoste. And they're taught the same, that particular town in that area is taught a system called Moro style, plate dancing. And where they put the plates on their hand and they move in a fashion of like Silat. So I asked the same kind of question. But if you look at that style, it's looks like Herman Swanda moving, right? the hands are moving like, it's very similar.
Right.
So according to Lagusa, that has a lot of influence from Indonesia. Of course, that was all, as you know, the Majapahit Empire, run. But he had told me that, because they move a certain way, even Lagusa moves a certain way. And he had told me, I will never forget this, that they both learned a style called Moro style. And I was like, Moro style? Like, what is that? And they said, and he said, plate dancing. I said, plate dancing? So yeah, they put the plate on your hand and make you turn the wrist and make you move your feet and your hands. And I was like, just like Kari and Silat, they make you do the same thing. So no, you didn't dream that. It's very, very well related, you know. Plus, you can see Indonesian islands from the Philippines. So you know what I mean? They may not think they're cousins, but they are cousins for sure, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So I just got the warning that I got 10% power left on the phone. So this is a badly worded question, but can you think of a couple of things that you find absolutely incredible about Kali and that you have taken and used outside of martial art?
So take something from Kali and that I used outside of martial arts.
Yeah.
So let me see, how can I? Combatively, spiritually, conceptually?
Whatever comes to mind.
What have I taken out of Kali? Specifically, I guess I
know it's a badly worded question. All right.
Well, giving me more.
Talk about anything else, but I'll give you my example. Trying to cultivate left-handed skill in double stick teaches you to be more patient with other people because you have to be patient with yourself. Okay.
True. Yeah, I mean that's certainly true. The classic Kali, the Villabrille-Largusa Kali, specifically, they have an incredible strong Spadiadaga system. Spadiadaga, because they train with that. It looks like something you would kill a vampire with. It's a it's a dagger, but it comes to a fine point.
Right.
And it's probably one of the only systems I've seen that really thrust that dagger in the belly from angles that are very hard to pick up. So when they do a lot of their spuddy dagger stuff and they do a lot of their stick and dagger stuff, it's not a lot of, they don't slash with that dagger, they thrust with it. And when they move in those positions with that optic, it's very hard to stop that dagger thrusting into your belly. And if you have never really gone against spuddy or dagger in that fashion, it's very hard to defend against. So that particular system trains the right and left very well. So my left was not as good as my right, obviously, because I'm, you know, and even if I did the spuddy dagger stuff with Rudan, it's definitely different than that spuddy dagger, or, you know, form for sure. The spuddy dagger and the Villabrille stuff, or the Villabrille system, really makes you pronounce that dagger. So you could thrust that dagger into a 55-gallon drum. They really position their body and footwork and power into that dagger. So you'll thrust it right through somebody's body, right, clearly right through it, you know, which I didn't experience before. So my left became super strong on that perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you go against a lefty or a righty with that style, because everything to them is offense and defense, no matter what angle.
Yeah.
And where it's coming from.
All right, cool. All right, well, I'm going to run out of power, and I don't want it to cut off on you. But
okay.
I'm not done with you. We're going to do this again, because I still got questions here.
Anytime.
All right, my friend. Thank
you
so much.
Listen, I'm glad you're safe down there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I prepared impeccably, because I knew that if I did that, the storm would move away.
That's great. That's great. I mean, it's unbelievable to see a storm just hang around that long, you know. But I'm glad that you guys are great down there and fine, and you survived everything.
Okay, man.
Okay.
All right.
Well, listen. Anytime, Dwight, and anytime. I'm glad you're doing this, and hope the best for everybody. Okay.
All right, man. All right. Take care.
All right. All right. Bye bye.
What a classy guy. I really like talking to him. All right, so that was episode number 2 of the FMA files. Episode number 3, like I said in the beginning, will be sometime next week. Dean Franco wants to turn the tables on me and ask me about my Kali experience. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. We'll do it sometime next week. I'm thinking maybe next Wednesday, but we'll see. Do me a favor and sign up for notifications for when we go live here on Facebook, but also subscribe, please, and hit the notification bells for the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast, for the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, and for the FMA files. Right? Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods, on Instagram at Dwight D Woods, at ilovejeetkundo.com is the Quick Skill Series Volume 1. Next, let's see, on Friday, September 13th is Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number 88 with Russell Leak of Underdog MMA. That's at 6 p.m. You guys know where to find me. Just keep your eyes on Facebook, and you'll see everything that's coming up. All right, okay, so this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. See you soon.